step out here, right now.
I'm fine where I am. You haven't told me why you're here.
I said step outside. Don't make this harder than it needs to be.
Without a warrant, you don't come in my house. Fourth Amendment. I'm not stepping out.
Last chance.
All right, let's talk about a story that is just wild. This is a story about how a man's dream home, something he worked his entire life for, turned into a crime scene right on his own front porch. It's all about rights, snap judgments, and one little digital witness that saw absolutely everything. Okay, let's get into it. Just imagine you're at home, minding your own business, and you hear that at your front door. I mean, that's not a request, is it? It's a command, and it's practically dripping with a threat. This is the exact moment a perfectly normal Saturday afternoon just completely shatters.
But then you get this response. Not yelling, not panic, just a calm, rock-solid statement of fact, of his constitutional rights. And with those few words, the battle lines are drawn. You've got a citizen who knows the law and an officer who seems determined to ignore it.
So, who are these two men at the heart of this whole thing? Well, when you see their backgrounds side by side, the situation becomes even more unbelievable and, tragically ironic. Okay, so look at this. This is where it gets kind of crazy. On the left, you've got Derek Vaughn. He's 48, a retired sheriff's deputy with 22 years of decorated service under his belt, and he's a brand new homeowner. Then on the right, you've got Officer Scott Harland. He's younger, has half the experience, and, oh yeah, a history of 14 civilian complaints. So the guy with decades of experience is inside his own home, and the officer with troubled record is outside making illegal demands. Wild. To really get why this whole thing is so messed up, you have to understand what this home meant to Derek Vaughn. I mean, this wasn't just four walls and a roof. It was literally the dream at the end of a long, hard career. Think about it. For over 2 decades, Derek dealt with the absolute worst parts of society. Danger, stress, you name it. This house, in this quiet little neighborhood, was supposed to be his sanctuary. It was the peaceful chapter he had more than earned. And this is the picture, right? Just before everything goes sideways. Derek is just living the life. He's mowing his lawn, meeting the new neighbors, enjoying the sun. Everything was exactly how it was supposed to be. Total peace. So now let's flip the script. What on earth brought Officer Harland to Derek's front door on that particular day? Well, it all came down to what Harland called his instincts. Yeah, about those instincts. Turns out they had already led to 14 civilian complaints over his career for things like racial profiling and using excessive force. And you can see here, while the complaints piled up, nothing serious ever really happened to him. It really makes you wonder, how does an officer with a record like that just keep going without any real checks on his authority? And here it is, the heart of the matter. Officer Harland drove by, saw a black man doing yard work at a nice house in a mostly white neighborhood, and a switch just flipped in his head. It's like the idea that this man owned this house, that he actually lived there. It just didn't compute for him. And that one single biased assumption is what kicked this whole nightmare off.
And that brings us right back to that front porch. This is where Officer Harland's deeply flawed assumption slams head first into Derek Vaughn's reality and Derek's expert knowledge of the law.
And this right here, this is what it's all about, the Fourth Amendment. It's the thing that protects all of us from the government, from the police, just barging into our homes without a warrant. It's one of the most fundamental rights we have.
Can you just feel the weight of that statement? Derek isn't some guy who just Googled his rights. He's a 22-year veteran of law enforcement, and he is literally schooling an on-duty cop about the basics of the Constitution, while that cop is illegally standing on his property. The irony is just staggering.
And look how fast it all went wrong. Harland gives an illegal order. Derek calmly says no. And for Harland, that no wasn't a citizen exercising his rights. It was a personal challenge to his authority. And instead of backing down, he just doubles down, escalating straight to violence. It's a complete breakdown. But here's the thing. There was someone else on that porch. A third party. One that was completely silent, totally impartial, and recording every single frame. This is a twist where the whole story changes. See, Officer Harland was acting like this was his word against Derek's, like nobody else would ever see it. He had absolutely no idea that a tiny little camera right above the doorbell was capturing everything in crystal clear HD, every illegal command, every calm refusal, every bit of his aggression. 48 hours, that is it. In just 2 days, that doorbell footage hit the internet and spread like wildfire. The internet did its thing, and suddenly everyone was a juror in the court of public opinion. And the fallout was massive. A $6.8 million lawsuit. Let that sink in for a second. With that video footage, there was no denying what happened. The violation was obvious. And for what he did on that porch, Officer Harlan lost everything. It's just insane when you lay it all out like this. At 4 p.m., an officer shows up because of a bad hunch. By 4:07 p.m., just 7 minutes later, a retired deputy has been tasered in his own doorway for knowing his rights. 2 days after that, the entire world has seen it. And the end result? A career is over and a family is financially ruined. All from a 7-minute encounter.
So that's the big question we're left with, isn't it? This whole story, this entire outcome, hinged on a tiny piece of tech the officer didn't even notice. If that camera wasn't there, this would have been just another complaint, probably filed away and forgotten. It makes you wonder. In a world that's so often his word against mine, can we only get justice when there's a camera rolling? And maybe more importantly, what's happening in all those other confrontations where there isn't one?
All right, today we're diving into a story that went viral for all the wrong reasons. It started with a simple knock on a door and ended in absolute ruin. It's a really powerful look at assumptions, accountability, and how one tiny camera can change literally everything. And this quote from Derek Vaughn, the man at the very center of all this, man, it just says it all, doesn't it? For him, this was never about a big payout or winning some lawsuit. It was about something way more fundamental, the right to just be left alone and feel safe at your own home. So how does a quiet afternoon doing yard work completely spiral out of control and turn into a life-changing event? Well, it all started with that one single knock on the door. Okay, so here's the setup. Officer Scott Harlan is out on patrol, and he spots Derek Vaughn, a black man, doing yard work. Based on that and that alone, Harlan labels him a suspicious person. After Derek finishes up and goes inside his own house, Officer Harlan follows him right up to his front door to confront him. And things escalated, instantly. Harlan doesn't give a reason, he doesn't mention a warrant, he just issues this threat while pulling his taser. He wasn't asking, he was demanding, and you can just feel the situation is about to boil over. But Derek's response here is what's so incredible. He stays completely calm, cool, and collected, and he clearly states his Fourth Amendment rights. He knew the law. He knew this officer was way over the line, trying to force him out of his own home with zero legal justification. Harlan completely ignored Derek's statement of his rights. He steps inside the home anyway, and when Derek pulls back defensively, who wouldn't? Harlan fires his taser, 50,000 volts. Just like that, Derek Vaughn collapses onto the floor of his own home. So after tasing and handcuffing Derek, Officer Harlan calls for backup. But here's where the whole story takes a massive turn. His supervisor, Sergeant Patricia Monroe, arrives on scene, and her arrival is about to change everything. Especially when a critical piece of technology enters the picture. Now, when the sergeant starts asking questions, Officer Harlan says he had probable cause. That's the legal standard he's supposed to have. But as Sergeant Monroe quickly realized, Harlan had no facts to back that up. None. All he had was a bad assumption based on someone's race and their zip code. So Sergeant Monroe, she can see that Harlan's story and the scene in front of her just don't match up. So she turns her attention to the man on the floor, Derek Vaughn. She asks him this one simple question, and his answer is the first domino that's going to topple Officer Harlan's entire career. You could have heard a pin drop. The guy that Officer Harlan just decided was suspicious, tased, and arrested, he was actually a decorated 22-year veteran of the county sheriff's department. He didn't just know the rules on use of force, he had lived by them for over 2 decades. And then came the final nail in the coffin. Derek Vaughn points out that the whole thing, the threats, the illegal entry, the tasing, it was all captured in beautiful, high-definition video and audio. His doorbell camera caught everything. The impartial witness recorded the whole story. So, with this undeniable proof, what happens next is just swift and decisive. Derek Vaughn released that footage, and the public reaction was immediate and, frankly, overwhelming. Just look at how fast this all happened. It's staggering. In less than 48 hours, that video going public leads to the officer's suspension, a public apology from the police chief, and a major federal lawsuit getting filed. That is accountability in the digital age. And the numbers, well, they really tell the story, don't they? The footage just exploded online. We're talking 8 million views by Monday morning. And the lawsuit was for $6.8 million. And not just against the department, but against Officer Harlan personally. His own assets were now on the line. Yeah, this lawsuit wasn't messing around. It was specific, laying out a whole list of severe charges, and every single one was backed up by that crystal clear video evidence. This completely took he said, she said off the table. This was a documented violation of Derek Vaughn's civil rights, plain and simple. Now, the police department, they settled their part of the lawsuit pretty quickly, but the case against Scott Harlan, personally, that moved forward. And the consequences for his actions would be absolute. They would strip him of everything he had. And this is where the math just gets brutal. The court found Harlan personally liable for $2.8 million. His entire net worth, his house, his savings, everything, was only $350,000. And because the court ruled he acted intentionally, he couldn't just declare bankruptcy to get out of it. This was financial ruin, and it was inescapable. That civil judgment basically kicked off a chain reaction that completely dismantled his life. His assets were seized, his house was sold, his retirement savings gone. His wife, seeing their financial future totally destroyed, filed for divorce. And then came the criminal charges. He was convicted of assault and sentenced to 18 months in jail. So you fast forward a few years from that day, and the lives of Derek Vaughn and Scott Harlan could not look more different. Their story really is a stark lesson, isn't it? It shows you the devastating power of bias and the clarifying power of cold, hard evidence. I mean, in the end, their paths just went in completely opposite directions. Harlan is now a convicted felon. He works a warehouse job, his wages are garnished for life, and he's estranged from his family. Derek Vaughn? He's still in his home, but he's become a respected advocate and trainer for police reform, using his own terrible experience to try and make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. In the end, Derek Vaughn made a choice to find a purpose in his trauma. And this quote, it really shows his focus isn't on revenge, it's on reform. He hopes his story, amplified by that undeniable video, can serve as a training lesson for law enforcement everywhere. And all this brings us to the big question we want to leave you with. You know, video evidence is great for accountability after something happens, but what about before? What systemic changes in training, in hiring, in accountability could actually stop an encounter like this before it even begins? It's a tough question, but the conversation is more important than ever.